Sir Jonathan Paul Ive, better known as Jony Ive, is an old Apple designer who worked closely with Steve Jobs on the iMac, iPhone, iPad, iPod, and many other Apple products. Jony Ive's design philosophy can be seen throughout Apple's products. He said about design, "There is beauty when something works intuitively." And one of his design rules is, good design is as little as possible. My goal for this channel is to become the most focused version of yourself. Jony Ive has been an inspiring person to watch and learn from because he removes all distractions in his designs and cares deeply about the essence of why, what, and who his designs are intended for. To me, that is the epitome of focus. So without further introduction, this is Jony Ive's creative process. What we make is who we are.
I mean, design is one of those, I think in many ways, massively misunderstood words. I mean, there are so many different sort of definitions of the word design to us. Designs that it's far beyond just what something looks like. It's the whole thing. It's how it works. It's how it feels. Now, there are certain things that are easy to represent. Obviously, what something looks like is very often the first sort of connection that you make with a device. You know, you make, I think, a lot of subconscious decisions about the nature of something by what it looks like. You know, you decide how you think you would hold it, how much it should cost, how much how much it would weigh. But this realization that what we make describes us. It describes the things that we care about. It describes our values. You know, our values. It describes our preoccupations. And one of the things, it was the first time I came across the Mac. This is in the late 80s. But one thing that happened was I was completely seduced by the object. But then what happened, and it was the first time it happened to me, I wanted to know who made this. Everything around us speaks to who made it. And it speaks to whether they were preoccupied and driven by price and schedule and opportunism, or whether they were driven by care and trying to make a product that would make our lives genuinely better.
What we focus on largely becomes our reality. Jony hints that him and his team are driven by service to the customer, service to others. What are you driven by? Is it money, success, status, legacy, or is it love, kindness, and service to others? I encourage you to ask yourself this question and journal about it.
There's a danger, particularly I think in business, it's one of the things that I've noticed a lot, that in the context of a business in a meeting room, we tend to be much more comfortable talking about product attributes that you can measure with a number. You know, that's a fairly safe conversation to talk about, well, 5 is bigger than 2, and nobody's going to argue that. So we tend to talk historically about price and speed, and those more emotive, those less tangible product attributes can so easily be ignored. Now, the problem is, you and I both know, we make probably the most important decisions of our lives in the absence of numerical data. The materials it's made from, the more that we get into the detail of trying to understand materials, we become often fairly frustrated and dissatisfied. So that often leads us to developing our own materials. So the glass, the cover glass on the new iPhone is actually a custom developed material, the same as the aluminium on the back. It's an entirely proprietary.
It's a British term for aluminum, isn't it?
It is. It gets confusing, doesn't it? But it's that there's no detail that is too small that gets overlooked in terms of the care that we'll extend.
When we make an effort to listen to our hearts, we focus on what we care about, and that sense of love can be felt by others. Not all decisions can be data-driven. Not all decisions can be found out through thinking. Some decisions must be heartfelt. It's heartfelt decisions that make the world a better place.
I think that people perceive value beyond their ability to articulate why.
Yeah.
If you ask somebody why they like something, I truly have found that it has a relationship to the amount of care that was extended in its creation. But I think that we've found that when we care, when we design the inside of this product, that not many people will see. When we extend that sort of care, we feel that we're making a contribution to culture and to humanity. I do believe that people sense care in the same way I think that we sense carelessness.
This is why we must love ourselves first and foremost. If we don't even care for our own minds and bodies, how can we expect the care of others? First and always, love yourself and invest time and effort into your own mind and body.
I think this is such an interesting point that I think is often really not understood, in that for the things you saw this morning, there are many products that sit on shelves back in the studio. And one of the things that is not obvious is that when we're working on something new, we don't know it. We don't know that it's going to work. And so each time you come up against something that seems insurmountable and that there doesn't appear to be any solution, you're presented with a choice in that you can agree, and a lot of people would support the decision that, yeah, okay, this doesn't work, it's not a very good idea. You can try and push on, but you have to think, well, at what point am I going to sort of acquiesce and agree with everybody this, yeah, you're right, this isn't going to work? And I think it's one of the issues that's curious is that when we're copied, we understand that, okay, this product was copied and these features were copied. But one of the huge benefits of following is that there's a proof of concept. People know that this does work and there is a solution.
Yeah.
And I think one of our wrestles is to try and know, you know what, this isn't going to work. We're going to stop and put this on the shelf. And it's one of the reasons we don't talk about the many things that we're exploring, because many of them don't work. One of the things that still fascinates me is that you think you're solving this problem here, and then you actually end up spending 8 months working on something that's orthogonal. Because that's what you needed to solve to do this here. You don't get there, this doesn't work, and you shelve it. And then, 18 months later, some fabulously clever person comes up with the solution, and then it's relevant again. So when you've tried something, and it's hard to say, we were wrong, this doesn't work, and you put it aside, how things are constantly changing and moving, and as long as you're inquisitive, and as long as you love exploring, it's remarkable to me how we can be surprised and suddenly see something that just appeared completely irrelevant and as if it would never work, suddenly becomes compelling again.
Trust your process and take your time. Creativity and focus are not some switches you can just turn on and off. They are not dials that you can control and finely tune. Give yourself the time to wander and play. You are a human after all.
The creative process, I'm still completely in awe. I mean, it's the most remarkable process where you start with an idea that can exist with one person and it's in your head and you argue it backwards and forwards and you talk to yourself and then you talk to somebody else, but it's just you and I talking about an idea. But it's still a very, it's a fairly sort of internal, introspective process, I think. But one of the things that I've loved, one is that, on Monday, there's not an idea. Monday morning is like a usual Monday morning. Yeah. And unscheduled, unpredicted, Monday afternoon at 2, there's this interesting thought that is fragile and tentative, that starts to gain a little momentum and gets more compelling. And there's something that happens in this process that when you give body, as in make a model, make a prototype, when you give body to an idea, everything changes. When you can walk into a room where it's been before a fairly exclusive, and I mean that in the purest sense of the word, it hasn't been a very inclusive discussion. When you can put the first model down, for one, I mean, everyone looks at the same thing. I mean, it galvanizes everybody and it includes people. And it's I don't know how many times I've been lucky enough to be part of this process. And every time I just think, I can't believe how fortunate I am to be tagging along on this.
Ideas are delicate, so fragile. They literally only exist as energy in our mind. Hence, practice writing them down. They will be safer on paper. Write your ideas down and never feel pressured to share them until you feel like it. Written ideas that evolve into actionable tasks have a higher chance of becoming a reality. Find ways to have fun prototyping or modeling small ideas you've written down. Begin small.
But I think it's wonderful that a process as unpredictable and as volatile and as surprising can sit so happily, in many ways at the center of so much of what Apple does. And I think it sits there because our prime concern is making stuff for our customers, for people. We don't do this, we don't do this for ourselves. Yeah. And I don't know, I still think it's really quite lovely that people who aren't necessarily comfortable with the process, it's just not something that's naturally comfortable, they are patient because they've been through the process a few times and they've come to love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very, very special process.
We are the creators, and Steve Jobs once said,
"Everything around you that you call life was made up by people that were no smarter than you. And you can change it. You can influence it. You can build your own things that other people can use."
But it's your decision to decide what it is you want to change. And that begins with, you guessed it, focus. We each focus differently, but we all have the ability to focus. See you next Monday.